After George Floyd and the protests, I decided to drive across the country. This is not the first time. I've driven across America 8 or 9 times now. I'm not sure if this started because of my love for Jack Kerouac's On the Road, or whether I saw myself like Lawrence of Arabia, or whether I'd find any answers about where Iran, America, or the rest of the world was going in the midst of this pandemic, or even myself. I called my father somewhere right outside Las Vegas. "This is an incredible journey," he told me. I could hear it in his voice. I guess driving across America was like that, almost like the marathons he'd run or his hikes. There was something about the physicality of it, how long it was. "My life is about walking," my dad told me on the phone. "Who knows, this is the best time of my life." The only way my father had of retracing his past was taking 10-mile hikes in the forest by his home in America, going to the Grand Canyon with its mountain range like tobogans, watching the Nature Channel, or putting on films that dealt with Native American culture. "I am the last of the Mohican," my dad would proclaim. And this was absolutely true. There is no one like my father.
Between sisters, between family, between human beings.
And many of the customs he was raised with in Iran are similar to reservation life. Everyone shares and nothing truly belongs to anyone. The life of an ant is as valuable as your own. And nature was something to be admired and respected. "Look at this tree," my dad said. "Think how many years it takes to make this tree."
How many years it takes this tree become this size?
I looked up at the tree stretching high above the forest floor of Indian Point campgrounds in Branson, Missouri, where we were. I was 5 years old and my father knew everything. "Look at this rock," my dad said. "The river shapes this rock." My dad kept pointing things out as we walked along the trail. "You see the sun?" he said.
So beautiful.
I looked up at the sun. "It's 93 million miles away. If you travel by speed of light, when you come back home, I will be old." "Old?" I said. "Old," he said. My father was an electrical engineer and a computer imaging scientist.
Compare the size of the earth to the universe is smaller than a grain of sand.
Later, he would end up creating 22 patents at the onset of deep learning and artificial intelligence, making the image processing that could identify rocks and minerals for mining companies, different organs in the body with MRI technology, and working on those X-ray machines for the TSA at the airport. "I go through right away," my dad told me years later. "I helped make this, so they have my name." I always thought this was terribly ironic. He was protecting America in his laboratory, and as soon as he'd leave, he'd get comments like, "Where's your camel?" And his response, "It was too heavy to carry here." I wanted to learn everything about science, nature, and native culture, to be like my dad. Before we got to the campgrounds, my dad stopped at a trading post. As soon as I saw the pocket knife in a glass box, I had to have it. "Hushman," my mother said. "He is too young. He has to learn," my dad said. I was gripping the blade of the knife in my pocket as my dad concluded his lecture. "So multiply. If you travel by speed of light, fast becomes slow. So 2 years is roughly 25 years on Earth." 25 years, I said. 25, my dad agreed. The next morning was the 4th of July. I woke up before everyone else and was excited to explore the forest again. I wanted to try and find an arrowhead. I grabbed my pocket knife and ran outside. I was looking at the handle and could see the sun shining off the blade. Then it happened. I tripped on a rock and fell forward onto my stomach, and the blade went straight into my chest. I looked down and watched my shirt go from white to red in seconds. I tried to scream for my dad, but I couldn't make a sound. So I just sat there for a bit. I figured this was it. I looked up at the sun. I closed my eyes. Then I heard my uncle saying something and running over to me. In one quick move, he put his foot on my shoulder and yanked the knife from my chest. Then, everyone, hearing him shout, started running out of the cabin. My mom started screaming and crying right away. "Tora khoda," my mom said. "Bache man mord." My dad rushed over to the car to take me to the hospital, but his hands were shaking and he couldn't get the key into the lock, so he decided to call an ambulance instead. My mom had a towel by that point and was pressing it against my chest. Everyone was seated on the dirt around me, looking down and very worried. "I'm sorry," I told everyone. "I tripped." At this point, people in neighboring cabins started walking over to see what was happening from all the shouting. I was having trouble keeping my eyes open. I felt so sleepy. A white woman crouched down, looked me over and said, "You okay?" You're gonna be okay. Then she walked away. That got me mad. How'd she know? I could die. Then that would be it. My father would be the last of the Mohicans. I wouldn't learn more about the sun or travel by the speed of light or get to enjoy fireworks like everyone else. I wanted to tell her, but I still couldn't speak because it was difficult to breathe. Then the ambulance came. The attendant scolded me for playing with knives. Then the doctor did too when we got to the hospital. The knife missed your heart by ½ an inch, she told me, and held up the x-ray. Knives are dangerous. The trip was cut short after that. My parents were worried I'd infect my stitches, so we packed up and headed home to Indiana. On the way back, my dad stopped at the trading post to return the knife. I cried most of the way home. I promised myself I'd get big one day, find an arrowhead and buy the knife back again. It's now 10:09 a.m. I'm about 34 miles into Utah. The ambulance didn't come for 45 minutes, my dad says, still on the phone. Long time. The India doctors say 2 inches from your heart. Are you doing anything for 4th of July, Dad?
I am just by myself, and I am with nature, meditating. Is a process of, as I said, is construction and destruction, composition and decomposition. This is a long process. We cannot observe it and predict something meaningful. So we have to go back really to science rather than believing based on our limited logic or belief or faith. That's what I think for Earth, there is this cyclic process of yin and yang exist in the universe. Always something maybe seems very chaotic or